Now we're really quiet because he's.
But yeah, you guys haven't said a word.
I don't want to make the natives angry.
Well,
you had a good quiet moment there, so it gave me a chance to tell them what was going to happen. So
there you go. Good little pause. Yeah. Yeah. I think my biggest issue with some of the newer sessions, and I still why I don't play Pathfinder 1 that much right now is the attack of opportunity piece. I kind of not a big fan of attack of opportunity, especially when it was in 3.0. It didn't make much sense. They've improved it some, but in 3.0 it was terrible. The fact that you could actually step away from the creature you were fighting and whack somebody that was walking behind you, and then step back into it didn't make any sense. And I've done some sword training and actually working with swords, and so I'm kind of like, yeah, if you watch the real guys fighting and the speed that they're moving with their swords, there's no way you're taking your eyes off of the person in front of you. I mean, absolutely no way.
Yeah, I've always struggled with attacks of opportunity too. I recently added it back into my games, but only if it's like mono e mono. But if there's another target there, they have to defend themselves against two people. There's no way they can go after, like, take advantage against this guy. I just let him move freely. So my players are starting to use that for some more tactics too. They'll have someone step up with a shield, and then they can kind of free flow and get better positioning and stuff, which is kind of fun, cool to watch.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in 5e, it's a lot better because you can still enter, and as long as you stay in their threat range, there's no attack of opportunities to move, against you. It's only when you actually leave it that it becomes, and then they only get one of those, so that becomes a tactic too. You can leave, so that somebody else can leave freely, right? So try to provoke the attack of opportunity so the next person can go freely.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's when you realize you're becoming a real sword nerd. When you're having these internal struggles with your suspension of disbelief, and you're just trying to.
I feel dirty anytime I use attack of opportunities in AD&D.
Yeah,
it's not really a thing unless you're using 2.5, and we never did it back in the day, and I do it now because it makes a little sense, but I don't know, it's still just, I feel a little dirty when I do it.
It is in combat and tactics. They do have a blurb on it.
Yeah, that was when they first started. It's like the whole 3.5 so the 3.0 stuff kind of started filtering in around 2.5 and combat and tactics.
Interesting. Yeah. And I love the realist guys who start going on about, well, this kind of weapon wouldn't work and this kind of weapon wouldn't work, and they give you all the scientific reasons why. The fantasy in front of the game is kind of the one that gives it away for me. It is. It doesn't matter.
Actually,
sometimes you got to put yourself in check and be like, right, there's magic, right? Okay, so everything's out the window.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Lord Gasumba Jay said that he only does it whenever they leave combat or pull out, run away or something, which is pretty much when I only do it. I think in 3 and 4 and 5 daily, you'd get whacked if you drink a potion or any of that other stuff. So I don't do that.
Yeah, I don't go that crazy, but if the opponent has reach advantage, like a pole arm or something, I'll give it to them. So, especially if they're really facing their opponent and that opponent doesn't really have a way to defend themselves coming in, like not an obvious way. But I try to keep it really light on the rules because then players get all confused and it just bogs down the combat.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Tried playing around with delay a little bit recently, and I guess it's been about a month now, but man, really extended out the combat a lot to use like the old each weapon goes on its own initiative rules. That was rough.
Oh, yeah.
So how are you doing that? You just
I would have them roll their highest initiative first, whatever the largest initiative was, and then they could they would go on that, and they would use their, if they had 2 attacks or offhand, everything was delayed. I was using your delay button, but man, it just really wasn't working. Just too time consuming.
So is that different than the way we do it? Because the way we're doing it right now in our game is that they get their normal attack sequence. You'd have, say you have a specialized fighter that uses a longsword in one hand and a short sword in his offhand. You roll your general initiative for your longsword. You don't roll for your offhand as a different initiative.
Yeah, I was having them do it with the offhand as well.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so, and we used to do that back in the day when 2E first came out and all the speed factors and all that were right in, but you know, we didn't use it very long.
Yeah, it's pretty tough so much bookkeeping, because a short sword has like a speed 2 or whatever, and then if you have a long sword in your other hand, that should certainly go after the short sword. But man, it was too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like and I think it's by the book. I'd have to go look, but if you're a specialized fighter and you get 2 attacks with a weapon, that second attack goes off at the end of the round in the order that your initiative was. So delaying that is not too bad. It does seem to make combat take a little longer, but it does spread out the damage a little bit, so it's not all up front. So your NPCs will last a little longer.
Right.
People coming in. It's good.
Yeah, people are coming. We got another minute or so. We'll leave it for a few minutes, and hopefully more people will come. I think I'll just post one more time in here at the DM Classic channel, just to.
That's the lesson, man. I've heard he did an amazing job with that 2E rule set.
We're pretty spoiled, I gotta say.
I tell you,
I know some people are going to catch Celestian's stream later. They've already mentioned that they're happy that you're streaming it.
Yeah, it just means they can't win any prizes. That's all. So
yeah,
shrug.
Wow.
Yeah, I did mention that they should jump into the Discord and ask questions there if they could.
Yeah.
Although I didn't get the link beforehand to post it, so if somebody wants to drop it in one of the channels, I'll copy and paste it to the stream as well.
Yeah, let me here. I can. What do you need? What do you need? Is just
your Discord join link.
Boffin, do you have access to that?
Yeah, it's the same one that's on the website.
Oh, okay. There we go. What I'll do is I'll post it I'll post it to you there.
And if you drop it in the Q&A one, I can grab it from there too, or wherever. Yeah, just let me know which one.
Yeah.
Now Jay says anything that slows down the game down is too much, and I agree. I try to limit that, because I mean, some of these combats, they get kind of, I mean, the other day, last time we played, there was a combat with, I want to say like 12 zombies and 8 skeletons, and you know, AD&D combat is generally fairly quick, but that took the whole night. I mean, they're all low level, so there's not a lot of, you know, AoE stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, my Sunday game, we fought one were-rat for about 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Pathfinder. I was like,
wow.
Okay, guys, let's go.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Sometimes it's not a bad idea to throw extra bonuses, especially if people are saying, all right, yeah, you know, we're limiting the movement on the critter, right? That way, or we're isolating these guys. We're taking them out and working our way to the next. So you throw some bonuses at them, right, to speed it up, so it's not miss, one hit and then 20 more misses.
Yeah. There's been times where, you know, like I think even in that one they turned like 3 or 4 creatures towards the middle of it, maybe the end of it, and they didn't deal with them till the very end. And I just said I made up something where they just kind of fell apart at the end or something. I didn't want to go through it. It's sometimes you you want to make up something so that the combat they can move on because you can tell they're bored and you're bored. You know,
Yeah.
you have what is it? I think it was like a 20-round combat for zombies and skeletons, and that's not very entertaining at times.
You know, that's the official rule, right? The DM is the official arbitrator of the rules. You know.
Yeah.
If the combat's not working, you know, you make it work.
Yeah, I basically made them just kind of go away. Jay.
Yeah.
So how's your Friday game going, Frankie?
Catch me right when I step away. It's going
just trying to kill
good.
some time till they're ready to go.
No, I got you. Yeah, it's going really well. Oh man, a bunch of them died to a juvenile red dragon a couple weeks ago, but just in time for some of them to hit level 9, so they were able to cast Raise Dead. Yeah, like the timing was pretty solid. So now they're getting a little more brave. They're like, oh, we can raise dead now. Like, yeah, well, you still lose that point of constitution, and it's not guaranteed. So maybe still have a little caution.
So, Celeste, you know, the next challenge is like, you know, officially releasing the 1E books, right? That way we can get Jail come in and maybe we can tempt him in just a little and like sit there and get him to do this 1.J version.
I about a year ago, after the 2 rule set had got going, and it was probably about 6 months in, I think it was more than a year ago. I've been doing this for a while now. I kind of lost track of time, but I actually talked to Doug about it, and they weren't very interested in doing it. I think they kind of see it as, why have that when you got 2E already? I personally, 1E is great, and I loved it when I played it, and I prefer 2E, but there is no reason it couldn't exist in the same platform. I mean, there's almost no difference. They could use the same, adventures between them both, so it just means somebody, not me, because I'm not going to do the books. Somebody else would need to do them, and I'd be happy to help somebody do that. So, but I mean, if somebody wants to talk to Doug and try to convince him, I'd be happy to help and, add whatever hooks needs to be into the rule set so it would be easier to, the person wouldn't need to manage the rule set. They would just need to create the content, because I just don't have time to do the 1E books. The 2E stuff was a little, that was a while ago and I had a lot of time then.
Well, you also had that boost from having the rules CD, right?
Yeah, I was able to get a lot of the text in from that. Imported it from the HTML file. So yeah, it was definitely, I mean, I've got 2 handbooks and I'm waiting for some product from WotC to put in art assets in it for the Dwarf Handbook and the Gnome Handbook. And maybe I should wait until the end to mention that, but those are the 2 things that I'm going to be, trying to get finished, because that's the last 2 handbooks I'm going to do. Any of the, the Barbarian, the Ninjas, and the Sonics, I'm not interested in doing myself. And
what? No Necromancer?
That one either. Yeah, I just, I've got a ton of other things that I would like to work on, and so I want to get those finished. I've got Evil Tide is another module that I want to get finished and get out. And then that way I can focus on some other stuff that I'd like to get done.
We should definitely talk about upkeep of those modules when people start asking about that, because I think that's something that gets lost in the sauce when people think about becoming content developers.
Yeah. Well, why don't we actually start the session and we can get into some of this stuff, because we do have some conversation around content development and that coming up. So. All right, well, thank you everyone for coming to the 2nd edition AD&D symposium today. And well, just a little housekeeping note for everyone here. So we have some channels, and we have hashtag ADD12-questions. If you can put your questions in there, I'll be watching that for a feed and questions in there, just in case your audio is not working or blinking in and out. This will speed it up. We're a small enough group that I'm not overly worried about it, but it would be useful. Other thing is that we are giving out 2 prizes. One prize will be given out to people that are here. We'll do a draw from that. The other prize is based upon your ability to answer questions, quiz questions for AD&D and 2nd edition, and I'll be popping those in. Some of them are hard, so I'm going to allow time for what I call cooperative test taking, or cheating, as some other people call it. So you can look sometimes up, but once I post the next question, the answers that you put in will be based against that question that was just put in. So try to get your answers in as soon as you can, because as I add the questions, the answers will apply only to the question that I added in that time frame. So just so you know how that will work going forward. All right. Well, Celestia and Frankie, you are our main people on the panel today, so why don't you introduce yourselves? That would be the best, and then we'll hop into the questions. So, Celestia, why don't you go first, and then Frankie?
My name is Mike Wilson, actually. I go by Celestian just because, I don't know, I've done it ever since Dragon's Foot. That was like, 15, 20 years ago. But I actually had a character back in the day that used that name before I even knew it was in Greyhawk, so it just seemed like a cool name at the time. But in any case, I am a system engineer by trade. That's my day job, and my hobby is coding. I don't do a lot of it in my day job, so it's fun to work on it. On projects that I like Fantasy Grounds using the AD&D stuff. So. That's about it. Okay.
All right. Frankie?
My name is Frank Miller, Frankie, whatever you want to call me. So I've been playing AD&D 2nd edition pretty much primarily since I was in 8th grade, back in like the very early 90s. So probably not as long as some people here, but it's always been my love. I dabbled in Pathfinder, and then when I started in Fantasy Grounds about, I think, 5 years ago now. And then I went to Castles and Crusades. And then Mike here was able to get the 2E license going. And that was it for me. As soon as that happened, I was right back into 2E. On my personal side, I'm retired from the military of 20 years. And now I manage a supply chain ERP database. So there's a lot of database love that just kind of drives me to be a content developer on the Fantasy Grounds side.
Great, thank you. Well, why don't we start here? Mike, do you guys prefer Mike and Frank? Because I can do that as opposed to your.
My nickname is fine. That's fine.
Okay, Celestian. All right.
Yeah, I'm that on everything out there. So.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So, Celestian, why don't we start with you and say, how did you get started in D&D as a whole? Like, what was your starting point?
Around 1983, my mother bought me the red box set, and at the time, had no clue what it was. I didn't know anybody that played AD&D. I was young, and so I just threw it in the closet and didn't mess with it. And then that same year, about 6 months later, in my English class, Miss Temez had us reading The Hobbit in the class, and that thing really hooked me into it. I couldn't stop reading after that point. And then I remembered that she had got me that box set, and I pulled it out, and it was just, from then on, it was all I could do. I spent most of my time early on just making characters because I didn't have anybody to play with. But I met some friends as I got older, and we just, played AD&D. I didn't play much Redbox. By the time I'd met people that were playing, they were playing 1E, and we, I kind of jumped straight into that. I think my first character was a barbarian from the UA in 1E. And later on, it was paladin. And then eventually, the one that I played the most was my fighter mage named Celestian. And so I've played ever since.
Excellent. Did people enjoy your destroying magic function?
My destroying.
Is that part of? Well, as a barbarian in the UA, wasn't that your whole function?
Yeah, I never. Excuse me. I never did that. Sorry, I gotta drink.
No worries. Well, did you get to drink? Frankie, how did you get started in D&D?
First time I got started, I was in 7th grade, and we actually started playing Shadowrun. A friend of mine had showed that to me, and then shortly thereafter, my mom bought me the Hero Quest box set, and I freaking loved that. So I played that pretty religiously with anyone that would. And then a friend of mine introduced me to AD&D. By then, 2nd edition had already been out. And when my mom found out I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, she forbid me from playing it. But she was okay with me playing Shadowrun and and Hero Quest. And a friend of mine had told me that his mother did the same thing to him, and he just told her that he played Forgotten Realms. So I tried the same thing with my mom, and she was completely okay with it. So for many, many years, I never told her I was playing D&D. I just told her that I was playing Forgotten Realms.
I should have done that, because I had the same problem. My stepmother was hyper religious. I mean, there was a point where I had borrowed some books from a friend of mine, and she'd found them, and she was going to throw them away. And I had to just, basically freak out and tell her that those weren't mine. You can't do that. And she made him come over to the house, talk to her to get them back. It was, my God. She was,
I have a similar story, except with music, right? So what my mother did was she gave the cassette to the other person's mom, and their mom burned it in front of them. Instead of just handing it off. Oh yeah. Oh wow. But my mom was the one who went and burned my Lord of the Rings collection.
Oh wow.
So I had the books I'd saved up, bought them, and then she's like, "Oh, outsold the Bible? That's sweet." On the fire.
Oh wow. Wow.
I remember some of the albums I had back then, the Dio Last in Line album. If any of you guys have ever seen it, if you haven't, go look it up. It's got that guy on the front doing the whole finger thing. But that thing was pretty evil looking. But you know what? She never said a word about that. I don't get it. I don't understand.
Yeah. Okay, so I just posted the first quiz question for everybody, and I'll post them as we go throughout the session. So the answer, so as you go through, you put your, just as Delring has done there, just put the letter in, and that's fine. You can put the whole answer if you want, copy it either way, and we'll go through that as that goes. Excellent. Okay, next question. What is a freelance content creator? Celestial, what do you mean when you say that?
Well, it means you do have freedom to do something that you like. If you want to have it done and sold in Fantasy Grounds, you'll need to get some approvals from Doug. The person you will probably talk through will be James Holloway. But for me, it's mostly maintaining the rule set, keeping it up to date, and adding new features and such as I can. I do have the freedom of doing a lot of what I want. There are some limitations of what they do put on me sometimes. But I have, compared to some of the other rule sets, I have a lot more freedom, I think, because I don't use the same data structure as they do. And some other things, but as far as content itself, as long as it's within what WotC will let us do, Doug has been very open about letting us do that. Whatever we want. The only restrictions that we have right now is that we cannot do system settings that are not released for 5e. At the very beginning when we started the project, whenever it was first released, we didn't have that restriction, and I wish to God that I had done the Greyhawk one right then, but I didn't. I put off and did some other stuff, some of the core books, but now they won't let us do it until it comes out for 5e. So because of that, that means that Forgotten Realms, Ravenloft, Mastika, and what's the other one? The Arabian one, I can't remember.
Al-Qadim.
Those 4 we can do. And that's because they're all kind of connected to Forgotten Realms. At least that's what WotC told us, or told Doug to me, through Doug to me. Okay. So if they ever do produce Dragonlance, any kind of Dragonlance stuff, or Dark Sun, or Spelljammer, or Planescape, or Greyhawk, or any of that stuff, that does mean that we can do it in 2e. So, but outside of that, I mean, we're pretty free to do whatever we want, and we don't, they've never asked me about timelines on things. I'm, that said, I'm generally, once I say I'm going to do something, I'm pretty quick about getting it done. So.
Actually, here's a good time for a follow-up question from Gasumba, which leads into this. So no classic modules again, only setting neutrals.
No, as far as I know, there is no limit on adventures. In fact, I probably could get away with doing City of Greyhawk, because honestly, that thing is a huge, just big adventure waiting to happen. I mean, they've got like 12 panels at the end of the box set that is nothing but, here's some things that your party can do in the city and around it. Same thing goes for Greyhawk Ruins. Again, it's an adventure. It's not a setting. I mean, granted, it is set in Greyhawk, but that doesn't mean anything. Temple of Elemental Evil is set in Greyhawk, but they let us do that. There's a ton of other things that we've done that are in a setting, but I don't think that's a limit. Okay. That said, I haven't done those, those 2, because I really want the Greyhawk setting done before I do the Greyhawk City and then do the Greyhawk. I want all 3 of those, honestly, and they're all massive projects, but that would be, if I didn't do anything else and that was the last 3 things I did, that's what I want to have done so that people could play them all.
Right. Just for people who don't know Lord Gasumba, Jay Scott there runs an event that's starting to become a regular event yearly. That's the Greyhawk Con. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he'll be happy to post some information in the Twitch chat about that we can copy out and put in the college chat. But yeah, of course, for those who don't know, he basically drools over Greyhawk, lives, sleeps, eat, and breathes Greyhawk.
Yeah, he's the one who's running the 30 or 40 year campaign that's going on Greyhawk at the same time.
41.
41 years.
Yep.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, I've watched it too. Yep. Awesome stuff. And he does a lot of work with Anna, who does the maps, which are absolutely brilliant. So yeah. So
I watch Frankie, him all the time. He's good.
So Frankie, do you have anything to add to Celeste's comments around content creation?
No, only just a little. They've been really good about allowing us freedom of time. I just want to reiterate that. And there's a list basically of items that they particularly want us to choose from when we're going to develop something, but you don't have to stick to that list if there's I have 2 passion projects that I put out, Faiths and Avatars and Demi-Human Deities, neither of which were on the list. Mm-hmm. And they let me work on both of those. So there is flexibility that you have as freelance as opposed to probably someone that's a official signed on developer, which is pretty nice.
Okay, excellent. I think you touched on this a little bit already, but maybe we can go into a little bit more detail on what kind of the restrictions. So you because you're not tied to a developer with, let's say, Fantasy Grounds, which has a license, probably when to say with WotC and the content that they provide. But what are some of the considerations you need to take into play when you're actually creating content, and what you choose to do and what you have to sort of skate around rules wise or copyright wise?
Well, I mean, rules set, copyright wise, there's really for the stuff that I like to work on, there's not an issue because that's all owned by WotC. And as I said, the only restriction there is the setting specific stuff. One of the things that we do have to take into account, I mean, there is a delay. Like if you want to request something that you haven't requested before, you send it to James, and then the next quarter, WotC will go through and pull out whatever assets they have for that. And most of the time for us, that is just PDFs. I did early with the Monster Manual, the Player's Handbook, and the DMG. They did a reprint of those 8 some odd years ago. I can't remember the time frame, but they redid it, and so they actually had decent assets for those. The actual I forget the Adobe file names, but I mean, so they weren't just PDFs, and they were really clean. But all that content I already had from the HTML file, so it didn't matter from the core RPG stuff. So
right.
No, I mean, did that answer what your question you were looking for?
Yeah, no, that really helps. I think that because I know that when it comes into, so for 5e, which a lot of people are doing stuff for right now, there's the SRD and the OpenGL licensing. Is there something like that for second edition, or that people can move around? Frankie, you looked at.
Not that I'm aware of. Okay. So I don't believe that the Open Game license pertains to any of the 2E content. So it is harder to navigate. You have to get permission for, especially if it's a book, you have to get permission, make sure it's licensed properly through Fantasy Grounds. Especially like Mike was saying earlier, with the campaign settings can become a problem, but only if you're looking to actually develop the whole campaign setting. So, but we haven't seen that be an issue with adventures. Like you said, Temple of Elemental Evil doesn't roll off the tongue well. Is set in Greyhawk. That's not something Wizards of the Coast has released on 5e, but they still let us do it because it's an adventure.
Right. Okay. Great.
I did want to mention there are 2, and they're not the SRD stuff, but they are OGL. There is Osric, and there is also another one called For Golden Glory, which is like a 2E, a kind of 2E era specific thing. I think Osric works in both. It's kind of like AD&D and 1E and 2E. They kind of will work in both. Those aren't they're not created by WotC or TSR at the time or anything. So it's OGL, but it's not something we can use in tandem with, content from WotC, because it's not, now there are products that are on the store, for Osric. They use Osric monsters. They don't use the 2E monsters and items and such. So, and Sterno, one of the guys in the Discord channel for Fantasy Grounds and also in the forums, has been converting all that. It's done an amazing job. He's got a lot of that done. So that if somebody wants to convert Osric based adventures, and there's a bajillion of them out there, and a lot of them are amazing, you can talk to the authors or Doug, because they've got deals already worked out with certain people that publish that stuff. So you can convert those and use those modules that Sterno has created to make your conversions.
Okay, all right. I've got a question here from the audience. How much content is coming down the pike for AD&D, and how does it compare to other rule sets, excluding 5e? So no compare to 5e, because obviously lots of stuff's coming down for that because it's present, it's the present edition. But if we were to compare it to other rule sets, how much is coming down for AD&D?
So that's a hard question to answer, because I don't get notifications when somebody's going to start working on a project. Like Frankie could be working on some. I mean, I know Frankie's working on some things, some pretty big ones. I don't know when he's going to have them done. But there's other people that are working on things that I have no clue as to if they're coming out. I was in a game with a guy in Frankie's Friday game, and I had no clue he was working on the Marco Volo stuff for 2E until one came out. You know, he told me like the day before it came out. I was very surprised, and he's got like 2 or 3 of them already out. So they do give me early access to some of them to kind of just look over them and make sure that they kind of follow the standards of all the other modules and accessories that have come out before. But, you know, like I said, I don't know until it's really short term. I can tell you what I'm working on, but, you know, as far as what other people are doing and as far as how much content comes out, I don't, outside of third party stuff, I think we've probably beat 5E's, you know, how much has come out for them, you know, in the same time frame, you know, within a year. I mean, the first year, you know, we definitely did. I mean, there was near 25 products come out in the first year. So,
right.
Yep. Jay threw a question up about was curious if you knew if anyone from Smiteworks had approached Carlos Lissing. I'm not sure on the last name pronunciation there.
Carlos, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think Doug goes out and asks people if they want their stuff converted unless somebody's asking him for it. So I think Carlos is, if he wants it on Fantasy Grounds, I mean, I don't think it would be difficult for him to get it on there. The Advanced Adventures guy, Jeremy, I think his name is Jeremy. I love their stuff. They're there already. So I think Carlos could easily get his stuff there too. You know, and have just and he could probably even say, I would like to have Frankie do the conversion, and then they would ask Frankie, you know, if that was what you wanted. So
yeah, I think we got Hound Dog Jay on it. He's like, I'll talk to him. So Jay,
there you go.
Jay won't let that bone go. I promise you.
Yeah, I'd love to see Jay's. I didn't even know Jay had an adventure out until I was watching the stream the other day, and they were talking about it. It's like, oh, I want that, but I want it in Fantasy Grounds. I want it there so I can just play it. I don't want to have to go through all the, you know, doing it myself.
Are we going to name drop a piece of content or two that we're releasing there, Celestian, or do you want to keep that under wraps?
Yeah. So let me just say to everybody, just really quickly, for the quizzes, I'm just going to start posting because I don't want to. This is a great conversation, so I don't want to interrupt to do what I'm doing right now and telling everybody, hey, we're doing this. So I'm going to add them. Try to give everybody a reasonable amount of time to answer the question. So if you haven't had a chance to answer this number 2, get in there and do it now. And then I'm going to, in another minute, I'm going to post the next one, and we'll just go from there. Because like I said, I don't want to interrupt. This is a great free flow conversation, so I'm just going to keep pumping them in here. Go ahead, Frankie. Name drop away.
So this one's been another passion project of mine. I'm going to be doing Dragon Mountain. It's actually mostly done. I have to do a few more things with it. Originally, I was going to split it up into 3 books, but it doesn't work well that way. So I'm going to consolidate them all. I want to at least play through the first book before I release it. For final conversion, but just know that it's really close to being done.
Yeah, and Frankie's done some really good stuff. He did the Faith and Avatars and the Demi-Human
Deities. Yeah, those two were really hard because the PDFs were really old. A lot of free typing in those, unfortunately. They didn't have, the PDFs were so old, they didn't have text that I could copy. It was like a picture. So it was pretty rough.
He did a really good job. I liked it.
So, what else do each of you produce content for? And Celestian, I remember you saying that you actually did some content for Map Tool at one point, because I was actually looking to see if anybody else did 2E content. And I was thinking that Fantasy Ground was the only one, but you kind of mentioned you did a little bit for them. Who else do you guys create content for?
So Map Tools, back in the day, I actually wrote they call them frameworks. Fancy going to call them Ruleset, but it was an AD&D framework. Yeah, again, that's my passion. I love the game, so There wasn't one that did all the things I wanted to do, so I worked on it there. And then I came to Fantasy Grounds to do the same thing there. I just had my feel with map tools hit the limits of the platform for me at the time. And there's still people using it. I still get emails every now and then. Hey, thank you for whatever doing it. I do have a friend that refuses to use Fantasy Grounds. I even offered to buy it and get him every single piece of all the stuff for it. And so he uses Foundry, and I've started writing a system for him to use because I'm in that game and I want to play AD&D. So I don't want to use some crappy system, but I'm working on that for him. But it's just kind of a little side hobby project for me.
Right. How about you, Frankie? Do you do other than Fantasy Grounds?
Way back in the day, I did a little bit with Roll20. I was assisting with a character sheet for 2E, helping a developer with that, just in testing. But as far as like actual development, Fantasy Grounds has been the only one.
Okay. All right. Okay, cool. So we talked already about it. Just you guys are doing pretty good here, answering questions. So Celeste, I know that you've been doing some work on the forums, especially there's some extensions for first edition. What do you think are the major differences between first and second edition that you're sort of dealing with and with those extensions, etc.?
So I don't, there are differences, and I'll tell you my personal opinion of the biggest differences is in initiatives and the Matrix versus THACO. I mean, I know 1A systems did have THACO. The Player's Handbook didn't have it. DMG did, and a lot of the adventures specifically nailed it. Mentioned it, called it out. But a lot of people, I don't know why they prefer that tables and have to look it up. And so the two things that the extension does specifically is to change initiative to D6 versus the D10. And it also enables the Matrix sort of attacks. The NPCs, if you're using the 2E monster manual, what it'll do is it'll take their THACO and populate I think it'll make a, it's been so long since I looked at this, I can't remember exactly how I did it. I either generate a matrix based on their THACO, because you know what 0 is, so you can determine what the rest of them are. But I may actually have the table in there already and just generate it from that. So if you have a 6-hit die monster, it knows what the matrix table is. So, but other than those two things, there's not a lot of big stuff. I mean, some of the tables for I think hit and damage for some of the strength values are just slightly different. Same thing with some of the saves. So there's not a lot. It's pretty simple when it comes down to it. The matrix stuff is actually in the 2E rule set. I just hook into it based on a specific, if the module has got this rule set name in it, it knows to use the matrix instead of the THACO stuff. So
right. Cool. Frankie, I know you said that you jumped right back into second edition once it came on to Fantasy Grounds. Did you play much first edition?
I only a very small amount when I first started playing D&D way back in the day, and I don't think my memory is good enough to know much about the rule set anymore.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Because I mean, I have to admit, I've been leading this piece on second edition, but I actually never really played second edition until I bought it into Fantasy Grounds and then started playing a bit of it there. So I'm hoping somebody can explain to me what's the big difference between second edition and first edition. I would throw that out there as a question. Celeste, and to yourself and Frankie or anybody else who wants to try answering that.
Well, I can tell you, for me, like I said, it's initiative and that matrix stuff. Other than that, there is almost no difference. And people say, "Oh, half work missing and assassin's gone," and But honestly, though, that's content in the book. That's not. You can take an assassin from first edition and use it in second edition, and you can use a ranger from second edition and play it in first edition. So The mechanics are mostly the same. There are some differences, like Fireball has a cap to where it's like 10d6 versus, you know, first edition where they didn't have a cap on the, you know, Fireball's, you know, level d6. So you could be a 20th level and cast 20d6 Fireball, whereas, you know, second edition is 10d6. But that's my opinion.
Lord J points out, he says, specialty priests, elementalists, and wild mages.
Yes.
Okay. So some of the classes are definitely very different.
Yeah, and even then, specialty priest. I mean, druid is nothing but a specialty priest. To be, you know, I mean, if you compare them from the second edition to first edition. So, but yeah, those were big things. Specialty priests.
Right. Okay. So when did you start setting up? Like you started working with Fantasy Grounds. When did you start doing that? And I guess partially why. I mean, I got a sense that you wanted to play it, but it was because you wanted to play it in Fantasy Grounds, or was it that Fantasy Grounds was open to the opportunity?
No, it wasn't. I didn't go to Fantasy Grounds with the intent to try to get a license and being able to sell them through Fantasy Grounds, the content. My goal was I'd kind of hit a wall in map tools at the time, and I couldn't do some of the things I wanted. And I was actually digging around trying to find a different VTT to use. I tried to use Roll20 for about a month. Paid for their big, you know, whatever their top end thing was, and started playing around with their scripting and tools to do things. And I just hated the way their data transferred or didn't. So I went looking around, and I ran into this thing called Tabletop Connect on Kickstarter, and was reading down the page. Got to the bottom, it's like, oh, we were bought out by Fantasy Grounds. So I was like, okay, well, let's check out these guys. And so I went and looked, and I was like, oh, this is neat. It was like right at the end of 2017, and I paid for a license, or their per month thing, for about a week. After a week, it was obvious that I was going to keep using it, so I just bought it up front, straight up. But that was when I first started just kind of tinkering with it. And the first, you know, at the time it was just like, okay, this is going to be a lot of work, because nobody has, you know, the Ostrich one that was existing back then didn't work. It's just doesn't work at all. There was somebody had made a rule set decades before then, or long time before I'd started. There was a couple other things that were kind of may work, but didn't. They, you know, most of their content wasn't even there. And I was like, you know what? I've got the Core Rules CD. I do a lot of data conversion for, you know, scripts for work, converting one thing to another. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to do this. And so I took the rule set, and the 5e rule set, and I just started picking pieces out that weren't, you know, 2e, and weren't AD&D. Changed the character sheet just slightly, just started working it, trying to figure out the system. And then started writing scripts to convert the data from the core RPG stuff, and converted the player's handbook and all those just to get the reference manuals built. And then from there, it just kind of, you know, just a little bit at a time, I kept working on it, you know.
Cool.
Took a while.
Yeah.
In just a moment, if you guys don't know for sure, Mike is streaming this on his stream, Celestian GC. If you guys would, it's always a good help to follow people. It doesn't cost you anything on Twitch to follow people. It gives them a little support and helps them get some boost in the Twitch ecosystem.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So just Frankie, you talked about it. I think you were already using Fantasy Grounds a bit when you went back to second edition, because Mike had done, or Austin had done the work. But what made you want to do the modules? What made you want to do those pieces?
That's Mike's fault. I don't remember. Yeah, feels like an eternity now, but I think I may have showed him my Faiths and Avatars conversion. I know I was asking him questions about some of the effects and stuff, because I was building out the classes, and I just kept smashing him with questions on how his effect strings worked, because I was trying to automate it a lot, and I was so in love with like how much automation was already there. I was like, oh man, I can really just incorporate all of this into these classes. And then he just kept bugging me about hitting up James to see if I could get it put in the store. And I was kind of reluctant at first, but then I emailed James. I told him I already had, at that point, I think I had like 3/4 of the book done. And then he gave me the approval, and I just pushed forward with it. And then after that was out, a couple other people in the Discord channel saw it, and they bugged me to do demi-human deities because they forgot Faiths and Avatars is pretty much Forgotten Realms only, but demi-human deities can transfer over a little easier because it's more for the races. So I finally caved and did that one too, which I'm glad. It's nice to have both books. They work well with each other.
Right. Cool. Excellent. Yeah, I really like the gods for the demi humans or demi piece. I find that's quite interesting, and yeah, I've been enjoying it. There's a few clerics in there. I'm like, wow, I should be playing those.
They're really strong.
Yeah, they are. They're amazing. Yeah. So, which modules was the hardest? I mean, Celestial, I'll start with you, and Frankie, you kind of gave a little bit, but which was the hardest one to put into Fantasy Grounds?
I tell you, I mean, none of them are hard to do, but there's a lot of work involved depending on how big they are. And Not Below about killed me. Not killed me literally. It was a massive amount of just work to get it done. It's a huge box set that has just, a lot of text, a lot of NPCs. The text, I guess, is not so bad, but having to create NPCs and each one has specific spells. So you'll have like somebody that has, like 15 spells, and then you'll have another guy right after him that has, 20. And you need to put all of them on there so that whenever the DM tries to use it, all the effects and all the powers and all the things associated with that spell are just a button for him. Because, if I'm using this, that's exactly what I want. I don't want to have to go in there and figure all this crap out. I just want to use it and be able to discuss, play with my, my group and not have to deal with any of the, the nonsense that goes around it. So I try to, whenever I do conversions, I try to make sure that everything like that I would want is in there. And Not Below was the worst. I mean, you would think Temple of Elemental Evil would have been a bad thing, but at the time that I was working on Temple, the rule set wasn't licensed, so it was something I was working on the side on my own. I'd knock out a level in a month or something, and then just leave it because my group wasn't blasting through it, so it didn't matter. But Not Below, I was like, I got to get this done all in one time, and I took like a week off of work, my day job. And still didn't, focusing almost all, this is like 10 hours a day. It's still, I didn't get it done in that week. So wow. It really just kind of burned me out for a while. That's why I haven't done a lot of content since that. I'm just kind of just recharging from that. Cause it's a great, campaign adventure. You'll go from 1 to, 15 probably going through that thing. So if that's what you're looking for, it's good for that. It's a lot of dungeon crawling, again, if you like that kind of stuff. But the easiest ones, I think, are the earlier things like White Plume Mountain. I love doing that because it took me, a couple days just to do all the NPCs and all the stuff. I spent more time working on the maps, just kind of trying to make them look nice. I made them myself. And that's something we didn't talk about, when we're doing conversions. You're not required to make the maps, but if the maps are garbage in the PDFs that you got, I just can't, send it out like that. So at the time I was working on White Plume Mountain, I was using Campaign Cartographer 3. I've been using it for probably a decade now. And it's nice. It's really difficult to use, though. Every time I start using it, I got to go look up how to do things. But When I was working on Not Below, I started using this thing called Dungeon Draft, and that thing is so easy to use. I could knock out maps really easy. Granted, the maps that I did for Not Below aren't fancy. I try to just replicate the existing map from the product and not add any of my own stuff. I don't want to, I don't want to change what was there. I want it to be as close to as I could to the original product, so that whenever they use it, they recognize everything looks the same. So it doesn't have a lot of furniture or fluff in the rooms, but it works in a VTT. The grids all work perfectly and that kind of stuff. So, but that was 45 maps, and that is a lot, but it wasn't that difficult. If I had to do that in Campaign Cartographer, I'd still be working on Not Below.
Yeah. It's a love and lost memory thing with Campaign Cartographer. I always liked using it, but I always found, okay, how do I do that again? How do I do that over there?
That's exactly the problem with that. It does everything you could ever want to do. Absolutely. Yeah. If you need something that does some very specific thing, or if you want a massive, huge map, it would probably be great. But I just, like I said, it's just too difficult for I say normal people, consumers to grab a hold of it and start using it and be able to do it, adeptly. But Dungeon Draft, you can pick up, watch a video, and be using it in 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, 45 maps. I can't imagine trying to do that in Campaign Photographer. That'd be quite a lot. Yeah. So Frankie, do you avoid the maps and do other things, or do you?
Nope. That's why Dragon Mountain hasn't been released yet. I had to redo all the maps the first go around. I tried to do them in Campaign Cartographer, and just some of the maps were so excruciating to try to get through there. I abandoned it for a while, and then Dungeon Draft came out, and I love that. Just hate to product plug, but I mean, it's the hell out of it. And it has someone made an extension for it. They will build the line of sight for you in Fantasy Grounds. So
nice.
I mean, it's such a time saver, and it's clean. It keeps the file size real small. I actually really like the artwork on it. So, but to get back to the question, I try to do all my maps, especially because 2E, sometimes it's just so hard to get the map to line up to a grid, and my OCD kicks in so hard. If I can't get that map perfect, then I'm like, nope, I'm redoing the whole map.
Yeah, I can understand that. You're working on maps and you really want them to look good. Yeah, I get that.
I have a question on my stream from Tech36. He says, do you create your own tokens for NPCs? So I can answer that, and then I'll let Frankie. But for most of the NPCs in modules, the way I make them is I use the imagery within the module itself. If there's an image specific to the NPC, I'll do a grab of that section and make a token from it using the token tool. As far as the monsters from the monster manual, the core rules CD had images for for the bulk of them, and for the ones that it did have them for, I made tokens from those. So you can tell the artwork is just amazing. You guys that ever looked at a monster manual 2, you'll know that monster manual 1, I'm being sarcastic, but. That's how I make them. They don't give us, all the content that we make for these, portraits and tokens. It's something we have to do. How the individual does it, I can't tell you. I know, whenever somebody asks me, I'll say, hey, you can grab some images from these, in the product. They'll just be scenes, that may not be related to what you're doing, but you need an image of a person. Is try to grab that person's face, the bartender, and use him for something somewhere else, just to kind of, use what you got, as best as you can. But that's how I do it. I'll let Frankie speak to his.
Yeah, one thing I want to do mention is that I did reach out to James on this very question, and as long as the imagery is from, say you're working on a Wizards of the Coast product and it's within the realm of that product, they have no problem with you using it. I don't know if that's true. Like if you wanted to use a 5e artwork for 2e, I didn't ask that question specifically, but they had no problem with me using like core rules, for instance, images for Dragon Mountain.
Cool. Yeah.
So
that's-
I
yeah,
think what he's saying is that you can use the monster manual tokens in an adventure that you're converting. I think is what he's trying. What he said.
Yeah.
Or even any other book, if it has like, maybe you like the way, I don't know, maybe you like the way Dragon Mountain draws its kobolds and you want it in your adventure, you could use that as long as it's still within, you know, Wizards of the Coast. So if it's another 2e product, you can certainly do that.
Yeah, so it's in token making, and it just brings up another part. When you approach a module, is there a way that you kind of approach the process? Do you kind of like, okay, let's do the tables, and then let's go do the imagery, and then start putting together? Is there specific pieces you start working on first to kind of put your house together, so to speak?
There is. So for me, I do all my NPCs first. Then I do all my items. Once I have those, then I start putting together the encounters and parcels. And I just start linking everything together. And then I'll start building out first I build the stories before the parcels. But I actually have a checklist, and I just follow it top to bottom. But I try to get like structured data before I start actually putting all the links together. So
I kind of go at it a little differently. I will do all the text first. I think that's probably the easiest thing, but it could take a lot of time. And once you have the text in Fantasy Grounds, and this is something Frickin may be interested in that he may not be aware of, but a lot of the things that you make, like items or kits or classes or NPCs, have a huge amount of text attached to them sometimes. And you formatted them, for the mod, the reference manual or the story entry with bolds and tables and whatever else. And so I do all that first. And then whenever I create the NPC, if you do a control drag of that story entry on top of a NPC or a spell or an item, it'll duplicate that text and copy it into the description of that item or NPC or spell or whatever, so that you don't have to sit there and do all that stuff the second time. So that's why I start with text first. You can also do the same thing with reference manual links. You can just grab, a page from a reference manual and drag it and drop it into, if you're trying to do a skill from some book that doesn't have the actual skill already pre-made, you can grab that text link, drag it, control drag it, and drop it onto the skill, and it'll copy all the text that's on that page into that too. So.
That's a handy tool. So both of you, I think, have games online. I think you both kind of stream some games online. I could be wrong. You can correct me on that. But what games are you pleasantly playing online and that you're streaming? Slush, we'll start with you.
Okay. So what am I playing online right now? B2, Keep of the Borderlands. Before that, we were running Temple of Elemental. Yeah. But yeah, we wanted to kind of get Temple. I think we finished it and we were all pretty high level. It ran for like, I want to say 2 years. I can't remember. Maybe it was. I don't know. It was a long time. And we wanted to start doing first level guys. Or I think I may have, influenced that a little bit because I wanted to run something that was a little more simple. But then we went to B2, so that's what we're running right now.
Okay, cool. And Frankie?
Currently running Rise of the Rune Lords on Fridays. That's been adapted to AD&D 2E on Fridays. I was going to run Rime of the Frost Maiden 2E on Wednesdays, but I had a couple players that were not comfortable being streamed, so had to ease off of that one. So right now, just the Fridays.
Just the Fridays. Okay, cool. And so I know, Celestin, you've been playing online for a while. Why play online? I mean, is it just a convenience thing? Is there something about it, or is there something? Obviously, right now, COVID is a obvious answer. But what are the before COVID? I think you were also playing online, especially with the Temple of Elemental Evil. What are some of the things that go into your thoughts around playing online?
For my group, it was just easier to consistently get everybody to show up. When we would do, games locally, we would play like every 3 months if we were lucky. And now we play every Saturday, and I much prefer that. I'm also a prepper, not so much in the sense of, having a cave full of food, but I like to prep my games a lot. I mean, you can tell, I built the whole rule set because of that. So
Right.
I like to have everything that I can possibly do, get ready. I mean, a lot of people, when they, I kind of liken it to like golfers, they practice, they work on all their stuff they can do on their own. I like to be able to, do work on this stuff as it's a hobby, and I love it. And I mean, it may be boring to somebody, but I enjoy getting the game ready and having everything perfect, and perfect as close as I can get it. So that whenever I'm playing, I don't have to think a lot about various things. I have it all ready to go. Whenever I'm running a game, my brain is usually just going a million miles an hour, so I have to just have it ready so that whenever I don't have to get lost in my brain trying to figure out what I'm trying to do. So
Right. Yeah.
So
Frankie,
for me, it's been just easier to get everybody together. We can play more, and I think the games are, at least the preparation is better. All the handouts and maps and the content is better. I don't get to see my friends face to face, but sometimes that's better when you're away from them because they're eating peanuts and beans for all day.
Right. Yeah.
So I've got a good question that I haven't seen brought up here.
Okay. Sure.
What would you feel is the best on-ramp for doing Fantasy Grounds and second edition? Like, is there one adventure you'd recommend over another for introducing people who are new to 2E mechanics, and maybe even game masters who are new to the mechanics in second edition?
I'll answer that, and then I'll let Frankie talk about his online game. But as far as that goes, I wouldn't I mean, N1 was the first one that came out, and I would not recommend that to first time GM or first time group. It's a neat adventure, but it's just not new people that have never played an RPG. That is not the game that I would introduce them to, because it assumes a lot of things. But I would probably go for what's that keep? There is a adventure that's in Forgotten Realms, not Candlekeep. I was just looking at it. Frankie, go ahead. I'll look it up, and I'll give you the link to it, and you guys can post it.
Okay.
Sure. What was the original question?
So it's just about, what do you see? I mean, it's kind of blending that. There's a couple of questions around this, so it's kind of blending together. Before COVID, obviously COVID is the reason why most people are using online right now. But before COVID, did you play much online, and why? I guess that's the question. Yeah.
I did. I actually didn't play online that much.
Okay.
My transition into Fantasy Grounds was because I had built a table and I had a TV in the table.
Oh, cool.
Right. And I was looking for some sort of digital platform to show my maps. And I must have tried, I don't know, 3 or 4. I don't want to name them all, but I tried quite a few. And then Fantasy Grounds, like, it had the most in the rule set, and I was playing Pathfinder at the time. So we had people coming over, and I was running into the same problems Mike was running into, essentially, where it was just hard to get everybody to show up on a consistent basis. I always had enough people to play, but not every player. People just had stuff going on at home. And then I was like, you know what? Let me just try to run a game. And I reached out on the Fantasy Grounds forums, started a game, and I've been playing with that same group now for 4 years. And it's been such a good experience. Just being able to consistently play every single week even if someone can't drive somewhere, they can still like play in their living room. The downside is comms and stuff, and people get distracted easier. But I think that's a pretty minor price to pay, especially right now. Obviously, with COVID, it's just been like it's a godsend. Like my life hasn't changed that much.
Yep, and to throw in Jay Scott's answer, it's Hamlet. Of course, it's always got to be Greyhawk. This is Jay.
This guy.
So
Hamlet is great. I just think the adventure around that is not a first level. Anybody that goes to the moat house at first level is just going to get killed, murdered. They're not going to survive it. Period.
I
12 zombies. Nope, you're not going to make it. And that's assuming you go through the front door. It's great.
Yeah,
though.
Exactly.
It's a good adventure, and if you've got experience in your party, is what I would recommend you doing. This is kind of what I did. I wouldn't go through N1, but I would go through the Haunted Halls of Evening Star. It is a Forgotten Realms adventure. The guy that converted, he is an amazing converter. Does really good work. I want to say his name is Talon on the Discord, and he does really good work. His reference manual is better than mine, by a long shot. So, but it is a pretty simple, you're going to a haunted place. There's monsters there, and it's not, B2 is not bad, but, ask Frankie, what he thinks about it. It's not something that you would send, modern RPGers or modern gamers to play without some kind of understanding of how things work there. And they won't, you don't want to try to dump all that on them. You get them a game that they can play and start and figure out the system. And I think Haunted Halls is probably a good start. And then maybe, if you are like second or third level by then, move them to the temple. I never run temple straight off. It's always, I run something else for my group. I ran N1, and by the time they got to the temple, they were second, third-ish levels. And you could do the same thing with, the Haunted Halls of Evening Star. Or, Frankie may have another suggestion on some other first-level adventure, though.
I sure don't. So I actually don't play a lot of modules until recently. My past experience has all been homebrew stuff. We would sit around and write little, janky one-off adventures, and then as we kept playing over the years, we kind of started playing Forgotten Realms as this living world. And just I think my roommate and I have played the same campaign for about 23 years now. So
cool. That's cool. Yeah. No, I have to agree that I played. It was when I was starting in D&D back in 79, 80. We played the Hamlet to death because it was there. We had it, and we didn't have a lot of money. So being, cheap, poor students and stuff like that. But it's definitely a tricky way to try to get which players are going to get to survive into the moat house for sure. That's a tricky little jaunt, that's for sure. I've had the frogs have eaten half a party one time, so that's always been interesting.
Yeah, and if you're looking for something that's more, it's more than just a couple of weeks worth of play, one of the guys has converted the Ruins of Adventure, which is, if you ever played the Pools of Radiance video game, which most of you may have not, because it was old. It's old game. It's not super easy to find these days and play it. But it's the adventure version of the video game, and it's more of a campaign spanning sort of thing. I think it may be okay. No, I was about to say I think it would be okay for a starting DM, but. And a starting group, but I don't think even then you need to be aware of how adventures are then and how they are now. If I remember correctly, there is a room, or there is at least an encounter somewhere in there where there's over 40 orcs, and most starting DMs and groups, that's a little too much. So these days I would probably cut that in half and have them come in and have 10 come in and then have the other 10 come in later, or maybe just spread all 40 of them out, and have them come in different waves just to make it a little easier. But a lot of that issue is also related to Fantasy Grounds. Just doesn't like to have a ton of creatures. I mean, you start bumping into the resource contention when you start having 40 NPCs plus your party in the combat tracker.
Yeah, the combat tracker just gets a little complicated at that point. Yeah. So, Frankie, just another sort of thought. I want to go back to your table piece, because that's something I would really like to do. How long did it sort of take you to? Did you sort of sit it, or do you inset it in your table? And how long did it take you to do?
So I found a really great YouTube video of a guy that made one, and it's recessed down in, but it has a lip that comes up, and then you can put slats over the top of it, so it becomes also like a kind of a dining table.
Oh, nice.
I think it took me 2 months, and it was really like the first time I ever worked on furniture. A lot of things I learned, like the wood matters. It's not like building a doghouse where you can kind of force the wood, but yeah.
Right.
So it's nice though. Like I really enjoyed how like originally it was just for the maps, and then after I started using Fantasy Grounds, like I learned how powerful it was and how everything is like super automated. And then I know I've said this before, but I mean we're really spoiled when it comes to 2nd edition. Anybody who has spent any time in 2nd edition on Fantasy Grounds knows how well that's automated. And how many features are there. So I really like taking advantage of all of that.
Yeah. I love saying that, THAC0's not a thing. You don't have to.
Yeah, it really isn't.
It's not.
And I think that's another great thing. Like it really, the different types of rule sets that you play almost don't matter, because it's just, if you want feats, you play one rule set. If you don't, you play another. But as far as like the little underlining rules like THAC0 and armor class, none of that matters, because it's going to tell you in the chat if you hit or not anyway. So, and a bonus is a bonus.
Yeah, exactly.
One of my goals in the rule set itself is the user. I don't want the player to have to, and this may shock some people, but not to have to know the rule. If they have the ability or the power or the thing, they can, I need to make a skill check. They'll need to know how to use the Fantasy Grounds interface to roll the dice, but they don't need to know the mechanics behind it, what it's tied to, if it's tied to dexterity or something like that. I just want them to be able to come in and play. Now you can not use some of that automation if you want, but like you said, they don't need to know THAC0. THAC0, who cares? You hit the thing or you didn't. Or your THAC0 is good or your THAC0 is bad. It's irrelevant. A lot of people get confused with some of the systems, and I had I had some players whenever we first started playing a couple of years ago that had never played AD&D at all, and they still probably don't know the system, but they know how to put a class add a class to their character, or to, cast a spell or add a spell or memorize spells or any of that stuff. All that's, it's abstracted out to where all they need to know is what they want to do. And that's kind of what the goal of what I was trying to do is automation, at least.
Right. So. Right. Just I'm going to take a pause here and see if there's any other questions from the audience or from your side there, Celestian. We can ask. I've got a few more here for you guys, but just want to make sure we get everybody's chance to get questions in as well if they have a question coming to mind as we talk about this. And anybody on this side of the, on the college Discord, you can always type your question into hashtag AD12 questions, so you can always put it there as well if you want.
So I don't see any questions on my side, but I did want to talk about at some point, kind of, and we kind of hit on it at the beginning of the things that I'm going to have coming out, this year. It may not be immediately because I'm still waiting for WotC, and I think Frankie has some stuff that he was going to have finished, and there are some things that I've heard in from other people that what they're working on. So
Yeah, go for it. I mean, I got other questions, but this is probably more some of the stuff they're interested in. So go right ahead and talk about what's coming up and coming down the pipe, because I think everyone's keen on that.
Okay, so the two things that I want to make sure they get done this year is the Dwarfs Handbook and the Halflings and Gnomes Handbook. Those are the last two handbooks that I'm going to be working on myself. I've already got all the text and the reference manuals are completed. I just need to get the assets from WotC. For whatever reason, those two books were not requested. I requested them a long time ago, but it was lost in whatever, the ether somewhere. So I re-requested those last week to James, and so on the next quarter, which is March, April, somewhere around in there, they'll send us a bundle with probably the PDFs, and then I'll start pulling in the data from that and get those finished and get them out. There is also and I know somebody is working on a Ravenloft setting. I can't tell you when it'll be done. I get the impression that it's unless he gets distracted with real life, that it'll be done at least by the end of the year as well. So Ravenloft is not my thing. I love the adventure, but that is something I'm sure somebody would love to have. And I think there's a couple of features that may need to be added for it to the Ruleset, for like they have horror checks and will check or something related to that. I'd have to look, but so there may be some new hooks added in for that one.
Yeah.
Now, would they be doing the revised set that was later published, or would they be doing the original box set?
Honestly, I don't know. I'd have to go dig through my messages in Discord to find out the specifics. But if they're like me, they're going to do the last one that was released. That's what I tend to focus on, because if you're gonna, like if we were going to do Dark Sun, I would not say do the first printing, do the last one, because that's the one that's got everything in it that was updated and changed, and everybody's that it's the last one. Why release the first one and then release the second one as well later on? So in fact, I actually spent a summer working on making Psionics for Dark Sun. So if somebody comes in and wants to convert the Psionics handbook, I would tell them not to, because I spent an entire summer working on getting Psionics into the system based on Dark Sun second edition, or the second revision, or whatever it was, the last one. So, and I honestly, I don't like Dark Sun. I don't like Psionics. So it was a lot of work doing something I really didn't like for somebody. And I was hoping somebody would put the Dark Sun thing together, but then they kind of put the kibosh on that. So if Dark Sun can ever come out, the hooks are there for Psionics already. So
cool. Yeah, I saw that in the character sheets. And you can build out the psionics as part of the combat piece there. So that's great. So Frankie,
sorry.
I was just gonna say, well, Frankie, what do you got coming up?
Well, like I said earlier, Dragon Mountain should be out. I don't want to give a date, but it's mostly done. Like I said earlier, I want to play test through the first book and make sure that at least that much is going well. And then if I don't see any crazy hiccups, I'll go ahead and forward that to James, and we'll get it finalized. There's still a couple more maps I got to finish, because, like you asked earlier, I do want to redo the maps on these because they're really awful. So it's not that the maps were drawn awful. It's just that the box set I was given, or the PDF rather, they did not. You can tell somebody just kind of scanned from like a really early scanner to get these big maps in there, and it didn't work well.
Okay, great. So, you got anything else that you're thinking that's on your mind?
For sure. Although, man, I don't want to like speak out of turn what other people are working on, but I would like to try my hand at one of the compendiums. I know there's a lot of people that want more monsters. So I think once I'm done with this, I'll probably take a look at what compendiums are not being worked on and give that a crack. Try to get some more monsters available to people, because I know DMs are always clamoring for more monsters.
So we're talking about the 4 add-on compendiums, right?
Yeah, I believe somebody's working on, and Celestine can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the first one is being worked on right now, or are they working on all of them? I'm not entirely sure. I would have to look at the list and see if any of them are vacant.
So I was about to say there is somebody working on monsters. It's not the annals that you guys are talking about, the 4 annals. Those are definitely would be awesome to have somebody convert those. Those have a lot of monsters, and you're right, people are always asking for monsters. But there is a guy that's working on the what do they call them? Not the compendiums, the monstrous. Maybe it is monstrous compendium. Whatever the you know how they come out in the binder.
The setting specific ones.
Yeah. So there's a guy that's working on 2 different ones, and they're already done. So they should be coming out with the next, I don't know. It depends. WotC, sometimes their Q&A takes months. Sometimes it takes, like 2 days. So it really depends on how quickly they get them. But I know there's going to be, that is coming out pretty soon. I don't remember the specific MC number on it, so I'm not going to speak out of turn and say what it was. But he's definitely got one completed, 1 or 2. And that's the person that, if I'm not mixing up people up, he's the same guy that's working on the Ravenloft stuff too. So,
wow. Okay. So, I'm going to hit you with the really hard end question now, right? Because we mentioned compendiums. So what about the Priest Compendium, Wizard's Compendium, those multi-volume spanning, like just encyclopedias of spells? And, why not ask for the big money, the Encyclopedia Magica?
I knew it was coming. I was going to shut you down before you even got to asking that. I'll tell you right now, I'm not touching that thing with a 10-foot pole.
No, that is a lifetime of work. Seriously.
Indeed.
I'm not kidding. That is huge.
Yeah, I think there's a D1000 table in there or some nonsense. So, but as far as like the priest and wizard ones, I mean, possibly. I don't have it on my radar right now, but I could see myself working on one of those more so than the Encyclopedia of Magica.
Yeah, so I want to mention, and this is it's not all about money, but when it comes down to stuff like that, I mean, you could spend 2 years working on one of those encyclopedias. And that's it. And you don't get a lot of money from converting that. So would you get a lot of use out of it for yourself? Are you passionate about it? That's more of a reason to do it. So for me, and I think Frankie, it's not something that we would get a huge amount of use out of, or not passionate enough to do it. So, I mean, that's kind of like the Night Below. I mean, it's huge. It's big. I think I'll get a lot out of it, and I really wanted to do it. So that's kind of why I pushed myself to it. There may be somebody out there that will do that. I'm not that person.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Like, I worked on Faiths and Avatars and Demi-Human Deities because I really wanted them. And if I was already doing them, I wanted other people to have it as well. So I know it sounds kind of greedy, but I certainly don't do it for the money. If I want the product to be available to everybody is why I would use it. And there has to be enough desire for me to want to spend so much time to get that out, and hopefully enough people would want it.
I guess this would break up the following. So hopefully someone who decides to have that type of drive to put that content in would ask, would you guys recommend they break it up by the volumes that they're broken into, A through whatever, or, do it as one lump sum? Or
I think they would have to. It's so big. Like, I can't even imagine how much data that would take up to try to fit all 4 of those books into one module.
Yeah, absolutely would not do it in one. It would be at least one, for one book, for one of the volumes. And, I'd have to look at the books themselves. I haven't looked at them in years, but I would probably, God, I'm telling you, that's a year's worth of stuff. At least one book is a year of somebody just doing that, unless it's like their full-time job and they spend 8-10 hours a day on it. And it's not so much the text conversion. I mean, you're talking about those spells. Each spell is going to need effects and damage or casts and saves and all this stuff configured, and you can't pick that up from the text. 5e has the benefit of all their products have the exact same text wording, so you can parse it out. But AD&D, they're different within. I mean, you and this is a problem with trying to make stat block converters, is because even within Temple of Elemental Evil, they'll start at the beginning of the module in one style, and then by the time they're at the end of it, they're at a completely different style. So trying to convert, smartly convert things by pasting text into a thing is just really difficult with the older stuff. It's not so much with the 5th edition stuff, because like I said, they're fortunate that they use the exact wording and everything almost, unless you're a third party and you do whatever you want.
Right, and that's part of why I threw the question out there. Wasn't to throw you guys so much on the spot. It was more a matter of like, we only get more and improved stuff in Fantasy Grounds by standing on each other's shoulders, right?
That's
so
exactly
this
right.
might be just enough to sit there and say, okay, so I should break it up into parts, and that might get someone thinking about it and saying, man, I really want volume A through whatever,
Right.
So to that, you touched on it a little bit in your interview with DM Wayne, but I wanted to go a little bit deeper in this, because we're talking about the level and the amount of work to do some of these pieces. And there was a little conversation about what makes a good conversion, and you talked a little bit about tools in there as well. What actually makes a good conversion? Like, what in your mind, if you're doing all this work, what is it? Because you were just talking earlier about how it could change from, you started at this style and by the end of it it's a different style, and that to me would be not necessarily a great conversion. What makes a really good conversion all the way through?
Somebody have something to say?
No, I was just going to say,
Okay,
go ahead.
So for me, and I think Temple of Elemental Evil is I think the conversion was great. It was difficult for me. For the DM, I don't. That's my version of a good conversion, is that the DM can play the game and not have to sit there and create NPCs or create items or do anything. He can read the text and follow what it says, and has links to where he needs to go, and allows him to play the game, not sit there and focus on where something is or how to do something. In my mind, that's what a good conversion is. How difficult the thing is to convert, that really depends on, what year it came out, who worked on it, that kind of stuff. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's kind of what my thoughts are on it.
I would throw one other thing out there. I didn't realize Frankie here actually has a Twitch channel. Wouldn't be a bad idea to get him shouted out on here, and help him out through the Twitch ladder.
Sure. Yep. Thanks. I'll paste the name in a minute here.
So, what are your thoughts, Frankie? What makes a good conversion? What kind of things are you looking for at the end of when you finish and you say, okay, this is good because A, B, and C and D?
So the first thing I do is I look at the reference manual, and is it easy for the DM to navigate the reference manual and get all the information they need? Because at the end of the day, if it's an adventure or whatever, the DM needs to be able to know what's going on. It's nice if the players know if it's something they have access to, but the DM needs to be able to do it no matter what. And if they're lost, then I don't think it's organized well enough. But there should be a good amount of links, I think, and it just needs to be like consistent structure. Like Mike was talking about how the PDF of Temple of Elemental Evil isn't consistent like towards the end. Mm-hmm. And you really want to avoid that. You want to make sure that however you started making it, it's the same way all the way through.
Right. Okay. And I'm kind of thinking too, just as we got about a half hour left here, and I want to do a couple of things. So what I thought, let's, as a group, let's try to answer the quiz questions, because I think some of the people on the other side didn't get a chance to answer the quiz questions, so they can maybe participate in this a little bit. The other thing I want to also do is just make sure, and while we're doing that, is there's some questions that people come up with for yourselves before we end. And then I just got 1 or 2 other questions that we have. So let's do this answer the quiz questions as we go through. I think, and then we'll just give our panel a little chance to catch their breath a bit, and then we'll go on. So question number 1 was, who created Dungeons and Dragons? A, Chris Perkins. B, Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. C, Dave Zeb Cook. Or D, Frank Menzer and Eric Mona. So what was the correct answer? And people can follow along in the quiz answers and questions. What was the right answer to that?
Are you asking me?
I know I'm not I am not asking you. You guys get to get a little breather. I'm asking the crowd here. They should be all shouting out at the same time what the answer is.
B. Jay said B, so I'm pretty sure he's right.
Yeah. Okay, that's right. B is the answer for that one. Okay, this one's a tricky one because it does say campaign set. So just keep that in mind for the answer. What year was the Forgotten Realms campaign set published? 1987, 1985, 1986, or 1988? I know some people got it right, so go ahead and say
A.
A, correct. A is the correct answer. Everyone knows everyone knows of the Sword of Kaz, but who was Kaz? A, part of the Circle of Eight. B, a general in Orcus's army. C, a leader of the Harpers. And D, lieutenant of Vecna.
My group better know this.
Pardon me?
My group better know this. I replaced the bad guy in Temple of Elemental Evil with sort of a Vecna theme. So
yeah,
Cost was there. His sword was there. The whole thing. So
yeah, there's lots of stuff going on. So D is definitely the answer there, lieutenant. And I think the lieutenant's kind of loose. I couldn't find the his real insignia. I had to I was doing some digging, but I didn't really find that. But anyway, lieutenant of, because somebody asked, wasn't he a general? And I kind of leaned that way to myself, but I couldn't find anything that said general. I could only find lieutenant, and they may be using that metaphorically. What was the name of Igvel's daughter? A, Natasha. B, Derwelza. Elena or Julie.
That's it.
That's right.
Yeah. That's the one. That's exactly correct. Yeah. All right. So B is the answer. Correct. This one was a little harder, but I was impressed that a lot of people got it right. Bonus question: what is Igvel's sister's name? A, Jolene. B, Lolth. C, Zegmoy. Or D, Elena. Elena.
D.
D is correct, right? Elena was her sister's name. There's actually a module with her out there as well. I think a second edition module. It's sort of like the false Igvel or false Natasha. Which of the following is a god/goddess of both Greyhawk and Faerun? Marika, Cord, Bane, or Hieronymus?
America, yeah.
You guys pronounce that? I say Marika, but yeah, America.
I just say it like that because it's so close.
Yeah,
because it's America.
Yeah,
because it's America. That's it. Yeah, America. Yeah, exactly. It is A. All right. So I saw some people changing their answers to this question as we went up there. Who worked with Tracy Hickman on I6 Ravenloft? So this is I6 and Dragonlance in the early days. Was it Margaret Weiss, Gary Gygax, Laura Hickman, or Ed Greenwood?
Everybody should know this.
Is current events.
Yeah, well, not quite.
Well,
Not quite.
yeah, not
'Cause that's the trick part of it.
Right,
That's it.
D.
It's
C.
Hickman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, it's Laura Hickman. He and his wife actually did a lot of the work on the early days of getting this rolling.
Right. I think they talked about it in the article, though, or at least one of the articles I was reading. They were talking about his wife.
Right.
Oh my gosh! Wait, did you see this? It wasn't Greyhawk related. So Lord Gasumba's power of knowing all was defeated.
Oh, nice.
Oh no! Oh no! Yeah,
Too bad.
that's right. Yeah, it's Although this, anyway, we'll go to that in a minute. So, which race is not in the AD&D 2nd edition player's handbook? A, half orc. B, gnome. C, elf. D, dwarf. This one was easy.
It should have been like the first question.
Half orc.
Half orc, correct. That's right. It was the very right off the bat, and everyone was talking about. This one's a little harder because I think a lot of people got this wrong on the other quiz that I put out. Is that the Forgotten Realms module Ruins of Adventure was based on A, a book, B, a mythic adventure of Norse history, C, a computer game, D, none of the above.
They all should have got this right because I talked about it.
Yeah, you did. So C, a computer game. All right. Now this one threw a few people off. I saw, and it really is the kind of door that we're dealing with here that makes the answer correct or wrong or right. So an elf actively looking for a secret door must roll what on a D6 die and choose all correct answers to find a door. Anyway, so A1, B2, C3, D4, E5, and F6. So there's actually only 2 correct answers because this is a secret door.
Steve, because you know I hit my player's handbook for 2nd edition, right?
yeah. So yeah, A and B is the correct answer on that. C is correct if it's a concealed door.
Right.
Yep. All right. Number 11, Ravenloft, the Realm of Terror campaign box set was published in 1990. Who wrote it? Tracy Hickman and Laura Hickman, Bruce Nesmith and Adrian Hayday, Gene Bleshfield and Black, or Black is there. Actually that's a little bit tricky because Black is because she got married and she's now add Black to her name. The first 2 were actually part of her name, I think, that relates to this, but it's not it. And Andrew Kermack, John Mangrum, and Andrew Wyatt. So which is the correct one there?
My copy says B.
Your copy says B is correct. Very good. Just look at the copy. Yeah, that's how I did another quiz earlier, and it was easy. The answer was the modules I had, right? So if you knew what modules I had, I got the right answers. So the last question here, number 12, TSR created Dragonlance as a campaign setting. So the key is the phrasing here for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. What year was it? 1985, 1984, 1982, or 1990? Yeah.
82.
82 is correct. The campaign setting was actually created in 1982. The first module didn't come out till 1984.
Wow, I did not know that. That's a lot earlier than I would have thought.
Yeah, it is. That's why I was
too.
I was really surprised as well. But apparently Tracy Hickman had actually started working on Dragonlance in 1981. And Gary Gygax actually said to him, hey, this looks great. Come on board. And started him off on it.
Yeah, I hope they come out with that in 5e so we can do it in 2nd edition. I wasn't a big fan of the modules, but the setting itself was just really neat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it was really neat.
Yeah, that book that was, right before that cusp of 1E, 2E compatible stuff. It was a good book.
Dragonlance Adventures.
Yeah.
Yep.
Same thing. They did the same thing with Greyhawk, the Greyhawk Adventures. But yeah, the Dragonlance Adventures was the one I ran my my Dragonlance games from. I loved it.
Okay, that's it for the quiz questions. What I'll do, I'm going to tabulate all the correct answers in here. I have a table built, and so everyone with correct answers will get a potential chance to win. So you could have multiple chances to win the prize, and then within the table I'll just roll and see who gets it. So if you get 10 answers correct, then you'll be 1 to 10, and so on and so forth in the table to make it work. Then later I'll also do a draw on everybody that was at the forum. Okay. Anybody have any questions before I sort of top off with a couple of last questions we have here? Anybody have any other questions they want to ask? Is there anybody, Celestine, on your feed that have some questions they want to ask as well?
I'll ask them and come back to it. Right now, there isn't any right now, though.
Okay. All right. Anybody from the audience here in the
so if you guys have any questions, please
Discord,
type them
have
in.
any questions?
Throw them in there.
I think I'm not entitled to questions anymore after that bomb I dropped on him.
Yeah. Jimmy, do you have any? Put you on the spot there. Oh, not hearing you.
You know, it might not be bad to reiterate what the prizes are at this stage too. While
thanks. So so there are two $20 prizes from Fantasy Grounds. You'll get a $20. That's $20 US to purchase something from the store. So that could be 2 modules or one of the handbooks. That pretty much what that boils down to. So that's what the prizes are. So we'll hand it out those two out. There is also a Gleam prize set out, and that one is worth $60. So if you wish to be part of that, go and we're not doing that one until tomorrow. So go ahead and fill out that. There's still time to go do that Gleam. I don't have the link for it.
I was going to say, if you could pass that link to Celestine, so that way we can share that out with the Twitch viewers.
Yeah, I'll find out and get that to you, Celestine, so we can post that to your group there.
Yeah.
Because I don't have that, and I probably should have that handy, but unfortunately I don't.
Looks like Miso posted it in general chat.
Oh, did she? Excellent. Excellent. She's over it. All right. Control C. Celestine, I'll put this in private chat to you. There we go. They'll have it there. Well, the other thing we've been doing, and there's no prizes for this, but we've been kind of asking people to share their stories about playing D&D, some of their favorite ones to stick in their mind. We like to gather as many of those as we can, kind of share that with the community. I think it's a good opportunity for people to, because that's one of the biggest fun part of the game is the amazing things you've done, or games that you've run as DMs, or things that your players have done, or things you've done as a player. That's always some of the big parts about D&D that keeps people coming back. So we've been asking people to put that in, and then I added. So I put a little bit about my character. Like I said, I still have the first character I ever created. I still have him. He still survived, even the Tomb of Horrors. So when we went through a lot with him, and there's a good little story, but I don't want to go through it right now in case some people haven't played Tomb of Horrors. But anyway, we're asking people to share their stories and add that into there. And there's a link in the hashtag ADD12-stories to either put it in the hashtag there, or actually go to the link. And Celestine, I'll send that to you too, so you can send that to the folks if there's anybody out there that wants to do that as well, because I think there's great opportunity to share stories. So on that note, I'm going to ask not so much a story, but I'll ask both. Frankie, you said you don't play modules, so I'm not going to ask you the same question. But Celestion, what would you say is your favorite module of all time?
GDQ.
So why is that? And for those who don't know what acronyms, what does that mean?
Yeah, I was gonna say. It's the Queen of the Demonwood Pits. It's against the Giants, G1, G2, G3, D1, 2, and 3, and Q1. It's because it was what I played that spanned my early high school, late high school, after high school years, and I've loved my friends from back then and still do, and that it was like it just really is cemented in my mind as a great, I had a really fun time back then. And I think that probably has the most to do with it because some of it is pretty terrible, but the adventures themselves are fun to play. There's not a lot of, you can make them fit in any setting or any campaign that you're running. So it is difficult if you're not used to, the AD&D system. G1 has 40 giants in one room or 30 something. It's crazy. Nobody can survive that if they all came out, and the way that thing's set up, it probably would happen like that. So, but yeah, for me, it's just cemented in my mind as one of the most enjoyable that I've ever played. And to be honest, since about the 90s, probably 91, 92, I haven't really played extensively in a game. I think most current was with Frankie. I also played with Bill Hartman. He used to run a game that I was in on Fridays. But yeah, it's that game, that adventure just really is just got some happy memories for me. So.
I actually do have an answer to that question.
Okay, cool.
Also, I actually have an answer for a question that was presented earlier because they're the same thing. The Sword of the Dales trilogy is actually really well written and is very easy to DM for a first time and is really forgiving to low level characters.
That's on the store, by the way.
It is.
So that's also
it would be a shame if a link from that wound up in the Twitch chat.
Yeah, it's a great game. I'm actually looking at running that for Founders Day.
The second book is really good. The first one is a great introductory with almost no risk, and the second book gives the players more of a D&D feel.
Right. Excellent. Okay. So just a couple more questions. We got 15 minutes left, which is not a lot of time, but just what in a nutshell, because this is again something I heard you talking about before, but what do you think, and it was Frankie as well, what do you think is the benefits of playing virtual tabletop games? Because obviously we were doing it before COVID and afterwards, and you talked about and I'm talking more about the game itself, not so much the fact that we can get people together and we can be all over different spaces and things like that. But what is it about virtual tabletop versus in person you think is good or bad? And we can do it from both sides, because I know a lot of people really, really like, and I've had some tables break up because they really didn't like the virtual environment or the virtual feel, and they like the in-person more. What do you think the benefits of, or the best parts of virtual tabletop is versus in-person? Sort of let's remove COVID from the equation for now.
Sure, I'll jump in.
Sure.
So the benefits for me is, well, with Fantasy Grounds, obviously the automation is really nice, but a lot of my players are very visual, myself included. So being able to show maps and their tokens and positioning is really nice if you have your battle maps and stuff. The con, I would say, would be just the comms, like people stepping all over each other when they're trying to talk, or it's much easier to get a cue when you're face to face with someone that someone's about to speak. And from a DM side, I find it really challenging sometimes to know if someone's asking me a question directly or if they're still in character. I find myself answering questions a lot of the time, and players like, "Oh, actually, I was still in character." Like, "Oh, my bad. Continue on."
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it would probably help if, and Frankie's group doesn't do this either, so I'm kind of familiar with that. But have cameras on everybody to kind of see somebody's like, they're just, you can tell they're leaning forward, ready to speak. That would, you would kind of pick up on that and be able to just kind of wait and let them finish or let them speak because they're obviously waiting for somebody else. But I think the benefit for me is, like I said, I like to prep, I like to get everything ready. Less confusion whenever the games are running, that kind of stuff. The thing I don't like about it is I don't get to see my friends as much, in person. But right now, it's not a good idea to do that anyway. So, what are you going to do?
Right. So, what's the longest campaign either of you have run? Like, what's the longest? Like you said, Temple of Elemental Evil online. You said was about 2 years. Is that about the average length for yours? I mean, we know that. There's one Greyhawk campaign going on forever, but what are some of the longer campaigns that you've run?
Me personally was probably, I ran a Temple of Elemental Evil before that, about 2 years before that one, so 4 years ago, and it probably lasted like 4 years. I was whenever I ran it back then, whenever they left, they were gone for a week to go train, or 2 weeks. When they come back, somebody else had moved in or things had changed, and I was trying to keep everything, really, I don't know, realistic, I guess. And I stopped doing that because it just really drags the things out. And I'm just not, that's not what I want to do. I'd prefer to, we go through there and do something. Sometimes I'll add some things that have kind of moved in if they're gone for a long time. But yeah, whenever I did that, it was like, they'd clear out a whole section and then they'd go away for 2 weeks to go train or rest or whatever and come back and they'd have to do it again. And it was basically just re-clearing, one level for a long time. So, but that one ran like 3-4 years. It was really ponderous. And the thing is about it is, like, we got to like the very last level and they just all kind of got burned out and we never finished it. I just kind of narrated what happened at the end. And that's why I do what I do now. And I don't do that as much as I used to.
Right. Frankie, your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, my live game with my roommate and a few friends, we've been playing the same campaign world for 23 years now. One of those characters I played for 10 years. And as far as Fantasy Grounds goes, I'm averaging about a year in every campaign that I run. So, yeah, it's staying pretty consistent around that time, which is probably because we get to play every week. And, the game we're playing for like 20 years or whatever, we didn't get to play every single week. So it kind of inflates the time quite a bit. Right.
So that leads to the question. We were talking a little bit about this before the whole thing, before we kicked off. What is your thoughts on the leveling up? Because the mindset has changed, and I've heard Mike Merles and some others saying, well, you should be leveling up your characters faster, and certainly in the older editions, that wasn't the case. And I guess I was kind of whining about Avernus and how fast things are. You level up in Avernus as written. I mean, you can obviously do things differently, but just wondering what are your thoughts on that? And is it because over this long campaign, so what kind of leveling does that do? And does that people sort of tire of that at that point, or trying to get at the right point? But what are your thoughts on that leveling process? And is it important as WotC seems to think right now that leveling is the most important, one of the things that people really want, so they want to have people level faster and get through campaigns faster?
I think it really boils down to what rule set you're playing. So in like 5th edition Pathfinder, you have a lot of abilities that are associated with those level ups, where 2nd edition, that's not the case. So if you're not a wizard, you're only going to benefit from maybe getting a little more Thaco or a couple hit points or what have you. And then after level 9, it's moot anyway because your hit points don't progress as much. So, and you just don't have as many abilities to try to learn. So I think just getting past the first 3 levels in my campaigns are more important. And then after that, everybody doesn't really mind as much. They just kind of have those milestones of the odd levels for the wizards.
Right.
And Lord Kazumba has chimed in with the get off my lawn kids comment of instant gratification world now. Technically,
Right.
they are campaigns, they're adventure paths, big difference.
Right.
Yeah,
but everyone calls them campaigns.
Right.
And I don't even know what adventure paths are, so you guys are talking language I don't understand. I didn't play 3 and Pathfinder to know. So, for me, I mean, we do level up a little faster than we used to, at least now. Or it seems like it. And I think maybe it's because we play more. We're playing every week instead of every 2 or 3 weekends. But of course, back then we were playing. Again, when I'm talking about back in the high school days, we'd play till 3 or 4 in the morning until we passed out. So,
Right. Yeah.
but I don't have a problem with slow pace or fast pace either way. Whatever is necessary for the group to enjoy the game and progress through whatever adventure that is set they're playing. So
Right. So, are there any questions from your stream there, Celestian, or anywhere
no
else?
No, sir.
No. Okay. Well, we got 5 minutes left, so I just want to take the time really to thank Celestian and Frankie for coming and being part of this and sharing your information and your time with us. I think that's the most valuable thing that anybody has is time. So thank you for sharing that, and just thank you for doing all the work that you've done on 2nd edition. It was great. I really appreciated it. I had a chance to get back into those modules that I still really like. And I guess maybe that's a question I have is that why do you think these old modules like Temple of Elemental Evil, the Giants, the whole Vault of the Drow and the Queen Web and all those, why are those still extremely popular? Because I still hear people talk about them, even though there's all these other things that have been created. And when you stop and think about other modules from 3rd edition or 4th edition or something that does pop out, maybe it's just the Red Hand module kind of sticks out, but or is that the Red Moon? Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. But there's not a lot of modules kind of jump out, but these ones everyone still really talks about or still tries to do, like the Return of the Elemental Evil or any of those things. Why do you think they're so popular?
I personally think it's because the original writers of those were so passionate that they just won't die off. They were really well written, and there was a lot of love and care given to them. So they're ageless, and everybody wants to go back and revisit those. And you still have a lot of players that were playing back then that play now, and they've gone into those later editions like 5th edition, and they want to bring those back to show everybody kind of where this all came from.
Celestian, you have any thoughts on that?
I think Frankie's right. I can't put my finger on it. And my preferences are influenced by what I enjoyed when I was growing up. So I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. But these new people that like it, I don't know. I don't understand their thought process on why they would. It's good stuff. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it and I love it. And I think what Frankie said is probably right. It's just you don't get that same kind of stuff from the current D&D adventures. I mean, they're kind of campaigns spanning in a specific world, and you've got a specific, plot that you have to run through, with like G1 through 3, it was this light plot that ran through them, but and it really didn't happen to have have to happen in Greyhawk, but it was there was in my head. What I think it is there's enough there for the DM to work with, but not so much that you get overloaded, which with a lot of the later products for me, that was really hard to try to deal with. Like some of the Forgotten Realms stuff is just really, it's just there's so much stuff that you have to be aware of if you want to do it the way other people may be aware of that setting and you're not. It's just there's a lot of things. So I don't know. It's personal preference for me, I think, but it's I don't know. I can't answer that.
I think Jay Scott put a great sentiment out in the chat here that would be great to share with people who aren't paying attention in the chat from Twitch. Let's see. I got to scroll up a little bit for it. AR campaigns, Venture Pass, Yeah. Play it and enjoy it however you choose and wish. I think that's the ultimate takeaway from all role-playing games, essentially.
Yeah, that's well said.
That's good.
Rule set shouldn't matter. It's whatever you want to get out of the game, you and your players. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah. All right. Well, once again, thank you very much, Frankie and Celestian. And also thank you, everyone who showed up both on the Twitch feed and here at the college, Fantasy Grounds College Discord. Appreciate your attendance and appreciate you coming. Have a great rest of your day and evening and weekend, and everybody have some awesome gaming out there. Thank you very much, everybody.
Take
care. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Alrighty, folks, that's going to be it for the night. Next week, we'll be back to our normal B2 game, and we will see you then. If you have any questions, please throw them out. Otherwise, I'm going to head off and get some dinner. I'm starving. So we'll get out of here. But thank you very much.